Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. I'm very pleased to be joined by Ken Wagner. Ken is the Executive Director of the Institute of American Energy at the Oklahoma State University. So welcome, Ken.
Well, thanks for having me. Good morning. Good
Morning
morning
for
to
you.
me and afternoon for you.
Afternoon for me, exactly. It's early morning for you because appreciate setting your alarm and getting up early today. So you obviously, as I said, are the Executive Director at the Hamm Institute for American Energy. Before that, you were in the Governor's Cabinet Office as the Secretary for Energy at Oklahoma State, and before that, you had a long career in as a lawyer. So with that background, can you give us some of your understanding about specifically hydrogen? You're obviously going to be speaking at the World Hydrogen North America Congress, which is fast approaching us in May in Houston. And so yeah, as I said, could you give us some background to Oklahoma and the energy system in Oklahoma, and also how you see hydrogen fitting into that?
Sure, sure. Well, Oklahoma is a really interesting place, and the story into hydrogen is a great one. Back in 2019, we were touting Oklahoma's place in the decarbonization world as it related to the power sector. Again, most people have a great understanding that Oklahoma has a rich history of traditional energy production, specifically oil and gas. Some of the most important innovations from in the oil and gas sector have occurred right here in Oklahoma that literally have changed the world's economy. And so we wanted to position ourselves not as the oil capital or the energy capital. I mean, certainly that's Houston, but we wanted to continue to be an innovation leader in the energy space. And so really, we want to be on the forefront of whatever's next. That was what we were trying to position Oklahoma from a policy standpoint. And really, not only in all of the above state, but really the more of everything state. So we produce most forms of energy other than coal. We don't have a large coal resource in Oklahoma, and our power production from coal is in the small single digits. So other than that, so hydrogen, when you look at the diversity of what energy we had, the sources, we have this tremendous onshore wind resource, 12 gigawatts of installed wind capacity with more in the interconnect queue. We're also one of the top states for solar potential. We have land, and we have sun, and we have transmission. So we just haven't, and that's because wind was more cost effective, and so it got developed first. We're seeing more solar development today. So back I met with a couple of hydrogen companies who were interested in production of hydrogen, and it just clicked to me that Oklahoma really is the perfect place to produce, use, and transmit and transport hydrogen.
Yeah.
And so in 2020, our Governor Stitt is still the governor, but he is big on goals. And in 2020, he made us refresh our cabinet goals. And my number one goal, I realized quickly that hydrogen could play a strong part in our economy, was to drive $1 billion of direct investment into hydrogen in Oklahoma. And in 2020, that sounded like I had lost my mind. Today, it doesn't. Today it doesn't sound, big or outrageous at all, right? But we've already eclipsed that during my time as cabinet secretary, and so that was really the first. And then I started realizing, wow, we can really do this. We passed a law in 2021, or in 2021, to constitute and execute the hydrogen infrastructure, transportation, and pipeline task force. And we did that. And from that, we were also able to set a bunch of goals and incentives from the state. So we passed 9 pieces of legislation in 2022 including a long-term tax incentive for hydrogen fueling infrastructure.
Right. And in terms of, I mean, obviously you mentioned the mix. Clearly, you've got a lot of natural gas and shale, I assume, specifically. And is some of the projects or the investments going into CCS and blue hydrogen, and also obviously you mentioned the lovely solar and wind profile. So clearly going to be able to get some good utilization out of electrolysis. So are you seeing it evenly split? How are some of the investments heading at the moment? Are you both green and blue?
Yeah, so it is about 50-50 on that. There's one project that's been announced that I think is really, the optics of it are just so rich in what I think Oklahoma is. We also have a lot of green and blue ammonia production as well.
Right.
If you think about that inland seaport, there's lots of ammonia production along that, and we've seen announcements of both green and blue ammonia projects. But the first project that was announced in 2021 was a company called Woodside. Woodside is a large LNG producer, and they export to Asia primarily. But they are citing a green hydrogen facility in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, as you mentioned, we're still the #4 producer of natural gas in the country. #5 or 6 for oil when you think about, depending on your metric. So I just love the optics of, here's a large traditional fossil energy company using green electrons in Oklahoma to produce hydrogen. And so in a natural gas producing state. So it really is fun to think of the possibilities. But yes, we've seen big announcements from the world's largest renewable producer or owner, doing a project with a green ammonia here in Oklahoma, and large wind producer for producing. We've got one company that has about $7 billion of wind, and they're doing a huge development, and so we're excited about exactly what it did. We set a goal in our 2022 legislation that we want to do. I think it's 2.8 million tons of hydrogen per year by the year 2030. Which is a pretty lofty goal, but the legislature sees that the job creation from this is tremendous, the economic impact to our state, and again, the opportunity to decarbonize, for us, transportation, power, and the economic impact, and then the decarbonization of these downstream events. And so I know this is a hard to decarbonize, is our panel, and transportation is certainly that one of those industries, right? We see the trajectory on the power production, right? From wind, solar, all sorts of reciprocating engines to hydrogen and blending to nuclear and other things. But the industrial sector, and again, I talked about our partnership with Louisiana and Arkansas. That's their big issue, is that industrial corridor, 220 million tons per year of CO2, and so that's been such a great partnership. We talk to each other every day and how we can help. But you're right, carbon capture, sequestration is something that Oklahoma certainly understands. Injection control, you didn't mention it, but I did work at headquarters at EPA for several years prior to becoming cabinet secretary, and worked on state primacy issues related to the Class 6 or the underground injection control program under the Safe Drinking Water Act, and so been involved in that for a long time as well.
So you've got resources there for storing both yes, CO2, but also underground hydrogen as well.
Yeah, I mean, those are things that are being, studied and trying to be understood. Hydrogen is a little more slippery molecule than normal gas storage and things that we're really well versed in. And so I think there's a lot of pilot level work being done, and research, applied research, near-term research, to find out what that potential is, and how can you use depleted oil and gas wells and pore space. I think those are things that we're all trying to wrap our minds around, to see if it's safe, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in terms of the state and I guess sort of energy security, is there potential there, therefore, to use the hydrogen to store it in state and have it as a sort of backup power generation for when you do have supply issues or in terms of wind and solar?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think that's really one of the best benefits of hydrogen is long duration storage.
Yeah.
When one of the challenges of having 12 gigawatts of wind capacity, is that a lot of those electrons are not really produced at peak times where there's great demand for them. And so we've seen the need to sell those back to the grid and congestion issues. And so I think there's a great desire from both the people that own the resource, to find profitable ways to use those electrons, and hydrogen production is one of those that I think is most. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of action around producing hydrogen storage facilities that can do that. And I think one of the greatest opportunities for hydrogen is that security of supply, right? Betting on any one thing, I think, always goes wrong. And so to have that diversification of supply, the readiness of the ability to perhaps blend into power sources. I know we've got a pilot project working where a company's looking to put hydrogen into CNG, so compressed natural gas for vehicle. We have a tremendous amount of cars, fleets, delivery vehicles, and city buses using compressed natural gas, and it is a cleaner fuel. But can you clean it up even more by blending hydrogen? And we're doing a project in the state on that. A large convenience store will have some fueling stations where they're blending that into it. So we're seeing it as both a decarbonization tool, an economic driver, and a security of supply. And obviously, if you have a security of supply, then the volatility of price in other commodities becomes less impactful.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of helping to reduce that particularly the fossil fuel volatility that I think we've all experienced, certainly here in Europe, but also equally in the US. And in terms of the role with the Hamm Institute, you're looking at potentially also getting involved in the next generation and training people in hydrogen and getting them to understand the opportunities.
Absolutely. So we have kind of three focuses: policy, innovation, and education. And all three really touch on leadership in the next generation. We believe that energy is in all forms is going to be needed to power the world as we continue to grow and we electrify everything. The projections that demand is going to grow by 50% by the year 2050 is pretty daunting when you think about it, right? And we're already seeing supply crises around the world. Certainly you all have experienced it, or the fear of it, for sure. But we've experienced it in short terms, and you see Texas going through brownouts every year. in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
And now winter becomes, that Winter Storm Uri of 2021, and in California and other places. And we see demand continuing to grow, and we see coal plants scheduled to retire. Well, how are those going to be replaced with what supply? We don't have an overabundance of supply right now. And so how do we fill that goal? And research, working with corporate partners. We have a part. Baker Hughes donated the facility, which was GE's Global Energy Research Center, that was built in 2015. So we have both lab opportunities as well as classroom opportunities. And so we see the full suite of educating the next generation of leaders, and continuing to be innovators, like I said, for Oklahoma and the country.
Yeah, excellent. Well, many thanks, Ken, for taking the time out to share your thoughts today. It's going to be a fascinating Congress in Houston. There's clearly huge interest and huge amounts happening, and proper steel going in the ground, and money's beginning to flow. So it's going to be interesting times, and we look forward to tracking Oklahoma and seeing the work that you guys are doing. So many thanks.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing your team in Houston.
Yeah. Cheers. Take care, Ken.
Bye.